What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Yota Xpedition. We got the 3rd gen Tacoma here in the shop, and we are installing some Molle panels in the bed of our Tacoma here from Body Armor 4x4. So if you're looking to mount some Rotopax cans, a shovel, some traction boards, or any other Molle accessories, these are going to be great here for the bed of your Tacoma. So these Molle panels from Body Armor 4x4 are going to work on both the 5.5 and 6.5 foot beds. These come in a steel construction that is also powder coated black. So we have a side Molle panel right here on the table. We also have the same exact one in the box. The left and right side is going to be exactly the same. And then behind me, we have the Molle panel that's going to be going at the front side of the bed. So let's go ahead and get all 3 of these installed. All right, so we're going to be starting out this install with the front Molle panel here. So we have the physical Molle panel itself. We have the mounting brackets. So if you have a 6.5 foot bed, you're going to be going with these larger brackets here. If you have the 5.5 foot like ours, you're going to be using these smaller brackets. We have all the other brackets that you're going to be needing, the rubber bumper, which is going to be mounting in the center for support, and then all of our bolts, washers, and nuts. Closer look here at the Molle panel, you can see we have 3 designated spots here in the center for Rotopax cans, so that's really nice. We have the Body Armor 4x4 logo, and then you have tons of real estate here for mounting other things. For tools, we have some here on the table that we're going to be using. A 5mm Allen wrench, we have a 10mm and a 13mm wrench, a ratchet, and then we have some torque sockets. We have a T30 and a T55. The T55 is going to be for the bigger bolts on the bottom of the bedside. If you need one of these, this is kind of an uncommon size. You can go to Harbor Freight and you can get a full set for about 12 bucks. So the first thing we're going to do is remove these Torx T30s along the top. You might have a rail like we have here on the side. Our Tacoma does not currently have that mounted. So we'll go ahead and take those out, and then the brackets for the Molle panel are going to be bolting there. So now we're going to take these brackets here, and we're going to take the factory bolts that we just took out, and we're going to place these just like this and bolt those back in. So now we have all 5 of those brackets installed. I'm going to go ahead and just get these just a little snug. I want to still be able to move these so that we can adjust to line up with the Molle panel. Once we have all of the bolts started, then we'll go back and tighten everything. Next up, we're going to take that T55 Torx. It's actually a 1/2-inch drive socket, so I grabbed the breaker bar to break these free. Go ahead and pull these bolts completely out. Okay, so we're going to start assembly of the Molle panel itself. We're going to get the brackets attached to this that go to the bottom of the bed. We're also going to get that rubber plug on the back side, so where it makes contact with the front of the bed, it's not going to be rattling. So we have one of our Allen bolts here. It's just a singular one, the only one that looks like this. A very small washer that's going to be dropping down inside of this, and then we have a small washer again and a nylock nut to get this installed. So put that on the back side, our nut on there, and we'll get this tightened down. So we got that 5mm Allen wrench and our 10mm ratchet wrench. We'll go ahead and tighten this down. Next up, we're going to take the feet that we're putting to the bottom of the bed. We're going to get those mounted on to the Molle panel like this. So we have a button head bolt, and we have a lock washer, a flat washer on there. We're going to feed that through, and then on the back side, we're going to put a serrated nut. Next up, we're going to take these big carriage bolts, the big flat washer, and the wing nut, and we are going to put those through these 2 square holes right here on the Molle panel. So we're going to have those sticking out towards the bed, and we'll put the washer on there and the wing nut. So I want to mention, if you are planning on putting some Rotopax cans on this, you want to mount those prior to mounting this into your Tacoma, and also those studs with the wing nuts that we just put in there, those are high lift jack mounting bolts, so if you have one of those, they include those. All right, so we saw a little opportunity here to just make a little bit more contrast with all this stuff. we're going to take these Body Armor 4x4 logos and we're going to put some red vinyl behind it and then put those back on. They'll just make the logo pop a little bit more. So at this point, we're ready to take this and put it into the Tacoma. We have our remaining bolts here with the lock washers and flat washers. Those are going to be going into those brackets that we mounted up on the front side of the bed. So let's go ahead and take this, get it in place, and start getting our bolts started. So we have those 5 bolts started along the top. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure everything is nice and square. We're going to tighten it where we want. We can adjust it up and down also and tighten it down, the original bolts into the bedside, and then we can drop the bolts, the big bolts, into the brackets down here on the bottom, get those started, and then we need to tighten down the brackets that go from the Molle panel to the bed. So we'll finish it off by tightening these. You really can't get a wrench back there, but you can get your finger, and once that nut grabs, it pretty much holds itself stationary and you can crank these down. So we have that side tight, and we'll go ahead and do the other. All right, that's it. Front Molle panel is now complete, so we'll go ahead and get these side ones done. So with the front Molle panel finished up, we're now going to get the side ones done. These again are going to work for the 5.5 and 6.5 foot bed, and we have all the hardware here laid out. This bracket here you're going to be using if you have the 6.5 foot bed, so we won't be using that. We'll be using this smaller bracket here. Most of the hardware and brackets are going to be pretty much the same as the front. Tools for the side Molle panels are going to be pretty much the same, minus the T55 Torx for those bed bolts. So we have our Allen wrenches, our 10, 13 wrench, and then we have a T30 Torx for the Torx bolts on the side for the rail. You are also going to need a T40 Torx socket. We have our brackets here that are going to be going behind the rail. We have our 5.5 foot specific bracket here. This is the bracket for the 6.5 foot bed. And then we have all of our other bolts here, the lock washers and flat washers on there, ready to go. So let's go ahead and get into it. So real quick, the installation between the passenger side and the driver side are going to be fairly similar now. We have this compartment here and we have our 120 volt plug here, and these 2 bolts is where the backside of the Molle panel is going to be mounting. Now here on our driver side, we don't have anything. Some Tacomas, they have compartments there, which would have the same bolts as on the passenger side, and you would be mounting to those. But since we have nothing, what we're probably going to do is drill some holes and put some riv nuts in there so that it's nice and secure. So we'll start removing these T30 Torx screws. We're going to have these 2 right here, and then we're going to have, I think, 4 along this rail. We'll go ahead and remove all of those. On these rails, you have these end caps. There is a bolt right behind that, so just push that in and pull that out, and we can remove that bolt. So now that we have that rail off, we're going to take these brackets here. If you have the 5.5 foot bed, you're going to be using 4, and if you have the 6.5 foot bed, you're going to be using 5. We're going to take this and we're going to put it behind that rail on the 4 locations that we took out those screws, and then reinstall them screws with that bracket behind it. I'm just going to go ahead and snug those down. I want to make sure that these can still move up and down because we need to make sure that we line up with these holes as well. All right, so we have these 4 brackets snugged back in place. Now we need to remove this bottom bolt here on this hook, which is a T40. So we'll go ahead and break this loose. You don't have to completely remove it. Once we have this loose, we're going to take that specific bracket for the 5.5 foot bed, and we're going to slip that underneath there. You might have to loosen both of these in order to be able to pull this out and get it in there. So once you have that bracket in there, we're not going to tighten this down quite yet. Want to leave it just loose enough so that you can move it, so when we get the panel in place, we can get everything aligned. So now that we have the truck prepped for the Molle panel, we're going to get the Molle panel prepped itself. We have the front section here and we have the rear section. We're going to attach these two together, and then we are going to get the rubber bumper on for support on the bottom. And then once we do that, we can take this and get it into the truck. So for the 5.5 foot bed, you're going to take the front panel and you're going to put it on top of the rear panel. You can see we have all of the holes lining up. So we have these 4 holes here, which is going to attach the front and rear panel together. And then you have these holes on the top, which is going to attach this to the bedside. So according to Body Armor's instructions, they want you to take one of these button head bolts, a lock washer, and a flat washer, put it through, and then a serrated nut on the backside. And the surface area here isn't even big enough to cover that washer, and I think it doesn't look very good with that washer hanging over. So I think we're going to lose the lock washer and lose the flat washer. Just take the bolt itself and put that through there because that fits much better and looks aesthetically cleaner. And then we are using the serrated nuts, so we shouldn't have any really issues with it coming loose. If you want, you could put some blue Loctite on there. You guys can do what you want, but I think that looks better. We're also going to take the carriage bolts here for the high lift jack mount, and we'll get those installed into the square locations. Big flat washer and the wig nut. All right, so before we go and tighten down those 4 bolts that are holding the 2 pieces together, just make sure everything is nice and squared up. Make sure all of your holes are lined up perfectly, and then we'll go ahead and tighten these down. So we're going to take our Allen wrench and our 13 mil wrench, and we'll get these tightened down. So the next thing we're going to install is the rubber bumper that is going to be supporting the bottom of the Molle panel. So let me just spin this around here so you can see exactly what we're doing. This is towards the front of the Tacoma, this is towards the back of the Tacoma, and the rubber bumper is going to be going right here in this small lower hole. We're going to be putting the bumper obviously on the back of the panel so it makes contact with the bedside. So we're going to take the rubber bumper, we're going to take that screw and put it down inside of it, and then we're going to take the big flat washer that's going to be going on behind it. Then we can go ahead and install that onto the back of the Molle panel like so. We'll take the smaller flat washer, put that in there, and then the nylock nut. So we're going to use the Allen wrench, and we're going to use a 7mm socket to snug this down. Okay, you don't have to get crazy with that. Snug is more than good enough. Last step in the assembly is the logo here, and just like the front logo on the other Molle panel, we're going to put some red vinyl behind it. We're going to take the smaller button head bolts and the plastic washers. It's going to go on the front side, and then these small serrated nuts on the back. And we'll use our Allen wrench and a 10mm wrench to get those tightened up. Okay, so we are done pre-assembling this. We're ready to take it and put it into the Tacoma. We have our remaining hardware here that we need. We have 4 button head bolts with lock washers and flat washers. Those are going to be for the 4 brackets that we installed on the top side of the bed. And then we have 2 additional flat washers. Those are going to be for those 2 lower bolts near our plug and our small compartment. And then we have another bolt with a lock washer and flat washer and a serrated nut. That is going to be for that small bracket that we attached to that hook on the lower side. All right, so with this roughly in position, we'll go ahead and get these top bolts started here. We'll get these lower bolts started. So we got the factory bolt with a new flat washer on there. Last bolt to get started is this front one here on this bracket. Might be a little difficult to get started. You have to put the nut back in there. All right, so we have all of the bolts started. Now we can go ahead and start tightening everything down. Those brackets that are behind these rails, I'm going to push those up as much as I can, and I'll snug those down there. And then once I have all 4 of those snugged in place, everything should be pretty much where it needs to be, and then I'll tighten everything else down. I'm just going to pull this up as high as I can so that it meets with the bottom of this rail, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten everything down. With it being a serrated nut, once you get it pretty snug and the nut grabs, you should be able to just tighten it down from the front. Don't forget to tighten these Torx back up. So with the passenger side all finished up, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here on the driver's side. We're not going to show you every single bit of it because it's almost exactly the same, but once we get to the point where we are going to drill our holes and put those riv nuts in, we'll show you what we're doing in case you have the same situation as us. All right, so I have the driver's side fully assembled and I have those brackets in there on the bottom of that rail. I'm gonna put this in place. I'm gonna get everything tightened down, and then I'm going to mark my holes here on the bed side, and then I'm gonna take this back off, drill them out, put the riv nuts in, and then reinstall everything. All right, so I have my bolt started, so I know where my Molle panel is gonna be sitting, and now I can push this against the bed side here and mark the center of these slots. Now, I've seen many pictures of these installed from multiple different brands, and if they don't have anything over here, they just let this kind of hang out down here, which I'm sure is fine and all, but to do it right, I'd rather do some drilling, put a couple riv nuts in there, and bolt it down like it should. All right, so we have everything we need here. I have a punch to mark my holes out. I got a center drill here on the drill just to get me a nice starting hole. And then my final drill is a 7/16. We got some M8 riv nuts here, and we have our riv nut tool. If you guys don't have one of these and you want to do this install the same way we are, you can pick up a kit from Amazon, fairly cheap. It'll come with the tool and a bunch of the riv nuts that you would need. So we're going to go ahead, drill our 2 holes out, get these installed. Should be pretty straightforward. All right, we got the holes drilled out. Your bed is fiberglass, so try not to breathe that stuff in. I just blew it out. And we've got the riv nut on our riv nut tool. Go ahead and put that in the hole and then compress this so that it stays in place. So we got the riv nuts installed. Now we can go ahead and reinstall the hardware we had taken out. We'll put our new bolts in there for the bottom 2 riv nuts, and we'll just tighten everything down and we'll be good to go. All right, guys, that's gonna be a wrap for the sides and front Molle panels for the bed of the 3rd Gen Tacoma. Hopefully this video helped you guys out. If you have any questions about this install, ask us down below in the comments. And if you want to pick any of these up for your Tacoma, you can grab it from YotaXpedition.com. Click the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.